Hello, and I am here today excited to talk a little bit about fine motor with you and fine motor development. There is something very broad about looking at milestones that are written in pamphlets or on handouts or in textbooks or in blogs that give you the basic layout of how fine motor may develop in your child, but doesn't give you that nuance that really, to me, makes fine motor development really exciting. So, I want to cover today a few of the concepts, two in particular, that go over what you will get to see as your baby's fine motor skills develop and what gives you this kind of insider look at all the things that tend to be happening with fine motor leading up to a major milestone with fine motor. This applies to gross motor as well, but I'm going to concentrate today on just fine motor. So the first basic concept that I wanted to share is that fine motor and most development in general is really coming from the brain. So when you see major milestones emerge, it's because your baby's brain has been developing, making new neural pathways. Those connections are getting stronger as they do trial and error and get frustrated when things don't work, and as they refine what they're doing. And there's no more specific area of development where we see that fine refinement than in fine motor. So anything to do with the little muscles in their hands. So we know if we're looking at a baby, we don't expect them to be able to hold anything with their hands. And the reason is that development starts from the head and works its way down, and starts with the trunk and works its way out to the fingers. I know you can't see them when they're up here. And it's why we see head control develop before hand control. And it's why we see rolling before we see pincer grasp. And so when we see and really take a close look at what babies are doing with their hands, at first they're just these appendages out at the end of their body that really don't have even a brain map for them to know that they're there. They're not, even if they are getting sensation through their hands, you'll know that babies they get much more input when we touch them on their trunk or cuddle them or rock them than when we're holding their hands or stroking their hands. So that's one of the basic ideas that makes fine motor so interesting, is you can really see it unfold from head to toe and from inside out. The other thing that we can look at and make that really unpacks fine motor in much more detail is to look at, even within the hand, that inside out development, starting at the trunk and moving out, can be kind of a microcosm of the hands themselves. And that's when we see very young babies not using the ends of their fingers at all, not even using the palm of their hand, but actually only getting development and refinement up to their wrist. And we see that as a squeeze grasp. And if you remember seeing your very young baby holding things somehow miraculously with their wrists, it's because their brain and neural connections have allowed them to have control up to about this point, but not further out. Of course, this changes so fast, and that's why knowing what steps happen give you, or at least me, a lot more joy in watching development happen, because we see these little steps happen and we can see babies start to grasp with their entire palm. The fingers are still kind of extra and not doing much, but their palm is starting to work. And then as their fingers and thumbs start getting more control, again, because the brain is making those neural connections and mapping what is going on at their fingertips and in their hand, partly from sensory input that lets them know where their hand is in space and how their movements are impacting the things that are around them, as they reach and they touch something and realize that they can also grasp, initially just as a reflex, but then eventually on purpose, is that you'll see their control just gradually move out further and further to their fingertips, till at first you see kind of a chunky grasp where their things have moved beyond their palm into the hands, or into the fingers, but the fingers aren't really refined. And then we see them be able to be much more refined with holding, to the point where they can actually pick up very tiny objects. It's when you start wondering about little pieces of dust or lint or Lego from older siblings, and they can do a pincer grasp much more refined than that squeeze grasp. And then that pincer, side pincer grasp, as it gets more refined, can become a true pincer or superior pincer grasp there. And even that gets more refined as they're able to pinch with much more refinement to the point where they can pick up a Rice Krispie without crushing it. And that is part of why I'm so excited about motor development, is we can see this unfolding of all the steps towards further and further refinement. And it's why by the time children are in school age, they're able to hold a crayon for drawing and scribbling, and eventually, of course, printing letters and writing cursive, and drawing amazing pictures. The value in knowing these steps is getting the joy out of all these little incremental developmental shifts that happen that lead to the big milestones that we're expecting. We know that the biggest milestones are the ones that are the most photo worthy, but I think what a shame it is when we miss those little subtleties that really show us all the amazing things that are happening in your baby's brain. Hope this breakdown of fine motor has been helpful. I look forward to connecting with you on the next video soon. Bye for now.